Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the fourth week of Trial by Fireside. It's been a while since we visited the island of Newcomer. We've been traveling around amateur, looking around for some matches and whatnot, but we finally made it down to the island of Newcomer. We're finally gonna do some newcomer coverage this season. But this is a great map to actually do our first map of newcomer coverage on. It's gonna be on CP Snakewater because that's the fourth map of the season. It's going to be between Gully Gamers and Bombing in 2. I'm Jay, as usual, the main guy, the main host for the Trial by Fireside project. But I do have a special somebody joining with me aside from Antlers on production. We do have Jazz coming in as our second caster for tonight.
Good
Jazz,
evening.
welcome to the project.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I've done any sort of TF2 casting, but I love giving back to the community. I love giving to the newcomers, right? And the amateur players. They're the grassroots. They're what keeps the game that keeps the game alive. And to join you guys on Fireside Cast tonight. It's always a great pleasure. It's a great honor.
No, obviously, thank you for taking the time to come on and join us, Jazz. Hopefully, you'll be coming with us for the playoffs or maybe for the next 4 weeks of the regular season. So, there's always opportunity to give back to the community. But let's go straight into the map review. We don't actually have a lot of time, so I'll just be quickly brief about the project about Trial by Fireside. Basically, this is a project covering newcomer and amateur for RGL. At least for this season, this is the first actual dedicated season of amateur newcomer coverage. But we're not going for the conventional style of casting. We're going to do a mix of casting and demo reviewing in during live action and live broadcast. Basically, as a way of doing a live demo review for free, generally catered towards newer players in the game who don't have as much experience in sixes as maybe the typical player who has played a bunch of seasons in RGL and played sixes. But this is supposed to be your intro to TF26 from a broadcast
Hmm.
perspective. And yeah, we're gonna go straight into CP Sneakwater. Commands, by the way, if you want to learn more about the project, there's hashtag or exclamation mark newbie. If you want to join the newbie mixes Discord and you want to join them on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to learn and actually play sixes for the first time. There's also exclamation mark Trial by Fireside, which is just a brief description of the project. So we're gonna go straight into Snakewater. We do have the graphic here covering over the mid for you guys, and we don't actually have too much time as we were getting some stuff fixed before the stream actually started. So we're gonna quickly gloss over the specifics of Snakewater, like from mid to second to last, from attacking or starting from the mid fights to attacking and pushing to holding, and go over the basic scenarios that most teams encounter when they play a game of sixes. So, anyways, we're here on the Snakewater mid. Mid fights are pretty self-explanatory, and to be honest with you, Jazz, Snakewater is one of the more I say classic maps of the TF2. Like mostly everybody will be playing this as one of their first like match aside from like Process and Gully Wash.
It's the Pug Classic, man. It's a map that I mean, it's like you say, everybody gets a lot of playtime on this map, and the mids in particular, if we want to get started on that, are very hectic. They're very fast. As somebody who's mained med, there we go, mained med for most of my life, it is a mid fight that can go really south for you guys really quickly. But the flip side of it is that, if you're coordinated and you are communicating properly the damage, the positioning that's available, you can really capitalize and really start, the round on the front foot.
Yeah, so while we do have this bird's eye view, we're gonna switch to like one of the perspectives around here, and we're just gonna go start with the basic positioning of mids, like just how, and we're gonna talk over about how mids usually normally go. But in terms of normal positioning, over here in the blue circle on the left, this is where your flank scout and roamer technically usually are as a basic rollout. Usually your roamer and scout will be up here, shooting around on high ground and aiming for either taking high ground or your roamer just bombs forward with the rest of your team. Your combo, which generally tends to be your demo man and medic, will be around here-ish. Oops, sorry about that. We meant to use a circle there, but ah. But generally, your combo is going
Just
to be
pretend that line is where is the
yeah.
general area. Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Generally, where your combo is going to be highlighted in yellow. This is where your demo and medic are. Your flank scout, your pocket scout, which is usually with the combo, is going to be glossing around. You know, this hut area, which I'm going to arrow, and this top right shed. Basically, it's on mids. Generally, the rule of thumb is scouts should try to play high ground as much as possible. But when you guys are pushing, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to stay on high ground. And generally, the point of Snakewater mids is, well, actually, when you talk about mids in general, there's always like two standard mids that pretty much everybody does. It's either the aggressive mids or the passive mids.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do the aggressive mids, basically, most teams at this level will just generally tend to bomb both their soldiers. And your team will walk across. Once your soldiers say, hey, I'm bombing in two, and then they say, I'm going to bomb now, that's usually the cue for everybody to just walk across point and just
And that
land on the enemy combo,
that's
basically.
something that is at the lower levels can be very hard to coordinate, but it's very crucial on a Snakewater mid that both of your soldiers are on the same page as far as like when they're initiating, right? There's a bunch of triggers to trigger the initiation of soldiers bombing. A lot of the times it's the demo calling big damage. Maybe it's a player's overextended, he's fed, and now it's like a 5v6 situation. But it's really important that if once your soldiers have decided, okay, we're bombing now, that everybody moves across the point in tandem. And I think that's why it's important as well for your scout to your pocket scout to sort of continually hang around that top right and that shack area, because you really want to make sure that your med is also across that midpoint very quickly, because uh, snake water things happen very, very quickly. And it's many a time that I've been sort of lagging walking across the point, and there's just one player who's anticipating that and ends up picking you off. So coordination is important on every mid, but on Snakewater especially important. And as well, it's very important that um, you aren't initiating too early, right? You can initiate really early if you're trying to play a very aggressive mid, but if you're noticing that the team that you're playing against is constantly trying to be hyper aggressive, right? They're just sacking soldiers in left, right, and center every mid fight. That you learn to adapt to that and either have your scouts play a little bit more tight, anticipating the bomb, or once they bomb, you just rush underneath and collapse on their team, or figure out some way to play around that.
Right. And with aggressive mids, there's obviously the polar opposite to it. In this case, the passive mids. So obviously, while you guys are you could be the ones aggressing, but maybe you could be on the receiving end of this. And generally, when you're on the receiving end of this, that means you're playing a passive mid. So ignoring these black arrows, it's pretty much the same setup minus these blue arrows here, because you're not actually going to be changing your position, or you're not going to be moving past these normal default positions here with the blue circle for your flank, the yellow highlighted stuff on the grass area for your combo, and the pink arrows basically the shed on top right where your pocket scout generally cycles between. And the point of passive mids is obviously you're not going to be the ones actually initiating. You're going to wait for the other team to initiate. And generally, the whole point of this is really, make is to force the other team's hand and make them be the ones to aggress. It's I'm not sure how if I would say this is something that newcomer teams generally try to fall back on, because it's I would say actually, Jazz, maybe it's harder to do a passive mid compared to an aggressive mid, because with aggressive mids, there's so much chaos that in a sense it's really easy to just turn it from like calculated coordinated chaos into like just unleashed chaos where just everybody taking random DM fights everywhere, and in the end it gets really scrappy and the team wins it. But obviously with coordination, it won't break out, and you guys won't just be taking random 1v1s, because this is a team game obviously. But
Yeah, I think generally, as you're learning the game, um, going a bit more aggressive tends to be the play, right? Because the other team is they're not going to be as well coordinated as like a seasoned team to know how to deal with aggression, right? So I think especially as if you're an amateur team, if you're a newcomer team, the more important thing is to really just get your coordination down, right? And that is good coordination. I remember when I was playing in Oz Fortress, one of my mentors made a point. It's like you either at the low levels, like you're either like really good with DM or you're really good with coordination, and if you got both, and like you're a deadly wombo combo, right? So I think passive mids aren't really as much of a factor until you maybe get to IM and above. But even then, there are different ways of playing that passive mid, especially if it's something like if you notice that their team is like constantly on the aggressive when you're getting to these mid fights, doing something like, say, instead of sending your med through Saw, right, and sort of ending coming out like right next to that shack in that yellow area, sending them up catwalk in order to bait out those bombs or sort of call the bluff can be a good strategy. But generally, I think you're correct in your summation of like, when things get very chaotic, and all of a sudden, it's gone from just sort of like a normal aggressive mid to like a fever pitch. That's when teams can really start to fold. They don't know how to deal with that pressure, and so if you're well coordinated, like that's where you thrive, right? Because you've got that good combination of like aggression, of chaos, but you also have an idea of like what everybody else is doing and what you're trying to accomplish with a fight.
Right. And generally, guys, what the objective of a passive mid is to generally play off the other team's initiation. If you're a really good team and obviously you might not know this now, but as you play, you'll start to figure out that calms are really important. So it's important to calm your positioning and calm what the other team is doing and how you're reacting to it. Maybe
I,
you'll take
I
this
would go
way.
I would
Yeah.
go as far to say that like as you're learning the game, learning how to communicate properly, concisely, and accurately is much more important than just being able to hit, consistent meat shots. That's very important, right? You want to be able to like have good DM, but being able to like hear a call or give a call and react to it in the appropriate time and with the appropriate response. That's a hard skill to learn, right? Everybody can grind MGE, but not everybody can communicate properly, right?
Right.
So communication at that low level, it's so crucial. And like the sooner you pick up all those skills, the easier it is to go from strength to strength as a player and as a team.
Right. I definitely do agree with that. And obviously, most players might approach this game thinking that it's more about DM, but overall, if you can work with your team to communicate and focus down players, you'll find that it's not just a one man job; it's a team effort in order to win this game. And as you
And
guys work on your comps, it's gonna help your team become way better in the long run. Even if you don't have as good DM as the other team, just because you have good coordination,
and
it's a
and
huge
one other
thing.
point I would like to add to that, and then I guess we can get to second, is uh shit, what was I gonna say? Um Oh my God, am I really just gonna have a brain fart like that? I might just have a brain fart like that. It'll come back to me in a few seconds. We'll get
Yeah.
to the next part.
No worries. But let's continue on a second here. So
It's
I'm
been a
gonna go
long
straight to
day.
mid. No worries. I'm gonna go straight from mid over down here to second. So generally teams would push through three areas or two areas here. If we just grab our pen, we just grab our text here. Area is usually called towards lower, where we tend to where they tend to push out of these two doorways right here, and they push all the way to second from the grass area onto point. The other area that most teams try to push through is through Saw, which is around here. We're not obviously in Saw right now, but what's inside this building is Saw, and they usually just go from around here and past these logs onto point. These are the general two attacking choke points that teams who have mid try to go through, and usually the if you're defending second, you're generally positioned around this area, which is around here in yellow, depending on what the scenario is. Like, obviously, there's three, default scenarios in TF2. You're either at this side where you don't have Uber, but they have Uber. You even where both teams have Uber, or add where your team has Uber. Depending on where you are, you'll generally be around this second area between the logs and the yellow circle here. The logs is right next to point. Uh, Generally, most teams as you progress to the higher levels, most teams usually default towards lower when they push, just because if you notice from saw and lower, it's easier to bring two scouts towards lower and spot any soldiers in the skybox, which makes it easier for your team to spot them early and and basically shoot them down before they can land on your medic. Whereas with Saw, it's kind of a more compact, not a lot of space to really avoid spam, but depending on the situation, most teams may try to go through Saw if they're trying to be fast and they just don't want to be spotted, and they want to catch up the enemy team if they're not positioned towards the yellow circle around here, which is generally the bats and bridge area that we call in second. Jazz, do we have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think as you've been saying, it generally depends on what the situation is. I find when I've been playing on Snake Water that my teams generally default to pushing through lower, just because it is that much more wide open space. You have greater view of what's in the skies above, or it's also good like if you picked off two soldiers, like pushing through lower is basically a free push. Because there's no threat of bombs, there's no threat of really sort of like sneaky plays. Scout could be hiding around, but if it's a 4v6 and a scout is feeding on second, like even better, right? Um, I do think there is always a time and a place to push through Saw, especially if your team is very good at tracking Ubers, right? And you notice that like okay, we might have like 10-15% ad, and they're holding close Saw, then like you can call that bluff and just take a fast one into them. As well, you can do something where it's like hold on, my cat keeps on trying to get on my desk.
No worries.
Beans, you can't get on my desk, Beans. I named my cat Beans. Um, but if it's like, say you're sending in a sort of, I guess like a fake sack or a distraction through lower, and you take it quick through saw. Say they're holding like on bats, right? It's a very passive hold. You can take a very very quick route through saw up the metal bridge, basically into lobby, and try to catch them out or force an exchange or what have you. Um, there's a lot of different creative pushes that you can. You can also go through saw, fake that you're going through saw, drop down through window into lower, which then opens up a whole another option. So there's a lot of different ways. Um, Generally, I tend to see more sacks come from saw and pushes come from lower. But as with everything, like if you're learning the game, like there's no harm, especially in scrims, to just try pushing different doorways on different in different situations. Like maybe it is like they drop two soldiers, you still push saw anyway, just to like get an idea of like, okay, if we're gonna push saw, if this is what we have to do, how are we gonna pull this off? um but yeah, lower is definitely the more goated push in my opinion.
Yeah, generally, if we look at this perspective here, just like Jazz and I have been alluding to, most soldiers tend to be. Oh no, I've lost my. Let's close this actually. But I'm not sure if you guys saw that. So that's a small technical difficulty, but no worries about that. Generally, soldiers in this area tend to be around this pipe area, which I'm circling in yellow here, and that's a default bomb from for soldiers sacking if you guys are pushing through lower. And just because and from this perspective, this is generally what you would see as you guys are pushing through lower. There's just so much to see. You can see not only the soldier on pipe here, but you can also see the combo playing towards bats around here, which is this blue arrow is pointing towards this bats area, and it just allows you to take second because there's so much room in this lower grass area just to avoid spam. So generally, unless you're playing a really fast-paced game and you just want to catch up the enemy team, generally most we advise most players and teams who are new to the game to push through lower.
Just please, for the love of God, like if you're going out through lower, check the corners, right? Look up above at the little awning when you yeah, exactly, or behind those boxes to your left.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So like there's all these hiding spots that you can get away with, that especially if you're the team that is holding second, and like you're noticing that their med has no brain, which like I was that player once. I'm still that player, to be fair. Uh, it's very easy to just like hide in some of these little hidey holes and get a frag. But I think it's very important too, if you're on second, um, and you feel like you're going to give it up, that you give it up with as few casualties as possible, right? I think too many teams at lower levels, the idea is okay, well we can just go in for a sack. But it's like if you're if you're sacking on maybe it's like an Uber disad and you don't get a force, and now you're back on your last, right? Your respawns more often than not aren't going to be up in time in order to stave off the fight, right? Because it's easy for a team, they can just park one scout on the point and push the rest of their team forward. So if you are going for a sack on second, it's very important to make sure like that it is like the time and a place. And if you're absolutely dead set on getting a sack off, like make it count, right? You don't want to be bleeding players stupidly on your own second, going into a last hold for like no reason, right?
Yeah. That's I think you put it into words in the way that I would have said it too. Most teams generally tend to make a mistake, when you're holding here on second, to try to go for a sack regardless of the situation. And when teams go for a sack and it's too late and you're down a player and you're pushed back to your last and the other team still has ad, it's very hard to, hold last with just 5 players compared to, you know, playing the percentages and just keeping that roamer alive rather than going for the small percentage chance that your roamer does get the force from the medic and you turn it into an advantageous situation for you guys.
Yeah,
With
and like,
that,
and even if you get like maybe you get a pick, but like I don't know, in my experience, sacking on a second that you're giving up is like not a good play. It's like a low percentage play, and then it just gives them a higher percentage of just being able to steamroll that from second to last and into a round.
yeah, and just because you're the roamer, guys, make it a point to not just see it as a class that you can just throw away and just sack into and feed into any situation. Having a soldier, regardless of whether it's the roamer or pocket, allows you to lock down and spot an area that one you can spam with projectiles with your rockets, but also you can jump away. It's not like the scout or the demo where they don't have the movement or the
Hmm.
ability to just spot and lock down a choke point with
I'm,
projectiles and just
I
jump
mean,
away
you
from it
you
too.
look at great roamers of yesteryear, like Blaze comes to mind, where like he's obviously like a very drastic example, one of the best players that's ever walked the face of the game, face of the earth, whatever. Um, but like all of his movements, all of his decisions was always like with the team in mind. If he's going for a sack, he's sacking because like that's what's best for the team at the moment. But you watch some of his demos and it's like it's so team oriented, it's not even funny, right? It's and
Right.
and that's one of the things that like I think new roamers get wrong is they think, oh, my role is to sack and give up my life. It's like, nah, dude, if you like a good roamer who's conscious of like um of his health, of his ammo, of his importance is like really, really scary. And like
Correct.
you know it when you come up against like a roamer who's just like has no idea what he's doing versus a roamer who's like very aware of his role. So like, there I don't know how to close this point off, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah. Basically, guys, watch demos of higher level players too. You'll get a good idea of how to play your class and
I would
dedicate
also
yourself to the role too.
watch demos of higher level players, but also like if you can get mentors from higher level players, like that is even more important because they'll be if they're watching your demo or you're watching their demo, they'll actually be able to explain this is why I made this decision versus like if I can watch like a great medic pov, but like some of if I'm like okay, well why did he make this decision it becomes guesswork. But if it's like I'm having a good medic or a good player like look at my footage, then it becomes an instance of like, okay, well, you should do this at this instance because this is like what the optimal play is. Mentors are good, which
Yeah.
is what we're doing here on Fireside Cast, right?
Correct. Correct. This is great. This is great advice for you guys. So make sure you take it to heart and take it with you as you start your journey into competitive TF2. But moving forward, we do have last here. This is the last point of Snake Water. This is the last point before anybody can cap to guarantee themselves a round. But let's talk about these choke points that we have. Generally, when teams push, they go to the shutter. So on the left here, we do have the shutter, and that's generally the default area for where teams Uber through. There's the lower area, which is usually where a roamer or a flank tap might come in later on the Uber, and there's top right, which is where usually the enemy team who's holding last tends to default hold, depending on the situation, if it's even at least. If you're at this hat, generally the team holding last hat usually plays towards point, or they play towards left spawn where the bucket is with the sentry up. Uh, Generally, teams default towards shutter, like I said, because when you look at lower and top right, there's a lot of space that you have to cover and walk past, but also there are disadvantages to pushing through these two choke points. Like for example, lower, you're starting on the low ground. You never really want to push towards the low ground when the enemy team has the high ground. Top right, there's just too much space that you have to cover. Plus, teams that are holding last can also kite through the can basically go through their spawn doors. So shutter is generally the fastest way to go from point A to point B, meaning going from A, which is where you're pushing, towards B, either the point or the enemy team, depending on what you want to do with your Uber. And usually, when you guys Uber through shutter, just in general, when you're pushing last, your default Uber should be your demo man, and your pocket scout leading the Uber, walking across point. And depending on the scenario, what it comes with experience, but you generally either one have your pocket scout play point, or two, depending on the picks that you have. If you get a lot of picks, you can just go for the frags and just after that cap the point.
Yeah, I think.
Usually on a last push too, actually. So
Mhm.
usually the roamer and your flank generally tends to follow up later on in the Uber too. They don't go in at the same time usually. So
Yes. Okay. So what I was going to say is I think where you're pushing, if you're pushing into last, is entirely dependent on where their team is. And um, so it's very important. First of all, you got to scout everything out first, right? Pick a doorway. Okay, they've got a sentry in top left, and the combo is right. Yada yada yada, and like have a clear idea of like what the situation looks like, and then use that to determine like where you want to push. I think I'm actually a big fan of pushing lower. I think pushing lower allows for some fast, aggressive pushes. It's just important that it's like you have to know what you're going to get out of the Uber, and there's almost like a hierarchy of picks that you need to be getting when you're pushing into last. So if there's a sentry up, a sentry and a heavy are like the first things that have to go down, like no exceptions, because the sentry is just going to auto lock on to whoever, and the heavy, if he's fully buffed, is 450 health and able to just put out fat damage, right? So if it's like, if they've got like a heavy up top right there, or like a sentry in the back right, I would say maybe have your demo jump to that sentry, leash your scout, and then try to end top right, get the sentry down first, and then start focusing on the heavy. The sentry will die very quickly, but it's important to like everybody has to focus in all at once on like where that sentry is. Um, and as well, like pushing top left too. Maybe it's like an Uber disadvantage, or rather an Uber advantage, and they don't have yet, and you want to use it, but they're holding back close to that truck area. You can pop your Uber through that doorway on the top left side, and then jump your demo, and then again leash your scout. Maybe you don't even get any frags, but you've pushed them in to spawn. And what that's done is that's bought you and your team a whole lot of space, right? It's important to remember like frags are good, and getting the frag priority right is important, but space is also very important too. If you buy your team that much space, maybe it's still like a 6v6, or maybe you get a frag and it's like a 6v5, but like now you were able to just apply the pressure, and once you've won that left hand area or that right hand area, doesn't matter, for your team, then you can start the slow march across the point, and push them to the other side. It's important too, like when your scout comes in, be it your flank scout, be it your pocket scout, to, if it's safe, right? If there's no stickies on the point, to bait the point a little bit. You want to bait the point. You want to get that cap started, because one, it's just going to make finishing the cap a lot easier, but it's also going to shift everybody's attention. Once you're on that point, the team that is holding has to respond to that. They either respond to it, or like they lose the round, and potentially they lose the game. So you really want to make sure that you're doing everything in your advantage. You want to make sure that you're getting that sentry, you're getting that heavy, you're getting the demo, getting whatever, and then using that to like buy space, and using that space to buy the round, to win the round.
I do agree with that. Generally a lot of teams play point not just because it wins you the round, but it also corrals everybody onto point. So generally, if a team isn't coordinated enough or they don't know what to do, they might throw all of their team just to defend point, and that just allows your team to have free lemon pickings and just shoot the players that are trying to go for a point while they're distracted on defending point rather than shooting the players that are pushing, not playing the point. So that's one really good strategy that teams usually default to, other than the typical Uber push and go for the frags. So with that being said, though, it is 9:30. We're running a bit late, but while we
Yeah,
wait for players to be on the server, I do want to go over a few more things. Just talking about Snake Water in general. When you guys are pushing out of last, make sure you guys have protocols. So protocols, guys, is pretty much a basic thing in TF2. Uh, wherever you push, you need to know what your role is, like as a team, but also as a player. So when you guys are pushing out of areas in general, let's just use Snake Water for example. Here is top left. Usually your combo is going to push out of here, and then here through right side of lobby, shutter, drop down ish area. Usually your flank scout clears that around. So the basic protocol here is we're pushing out of last. Let's send our combo in the lobby through top right. Let's have our scout clear drop down and shutter. Let's have our roamer hold back here, pushing through lower just to, deny that back cap attempt. Usually that's just an example of what teams do specifically for this map for a protocol, but you'll find yourself like as you're pushing or defending, you guys have a protocol for, either where your team should be positioned to defend, or when you guys are pushing, where should each player be positioned, as you're pushing out. And you guys need to have that down because there will be scenarios and matches where teams won't play conventionally, or like when you're pushing out of somewhere, a team will try to go for a flank, or they'll try to push a flank, and you guys need to know who is positioned to handle that, so on and so forth. And that's really key, especially if you don't want your team to get lost in the chaos and not play the blame game with each other where it's like, oh well, these guys flank because we didn't know what to do there, or I didn't know it was my role to hold that flank, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to have protocols.
Yeah, I think to wait, what'd you say, Antlers? All right, let me make my point, and then we'll go through the roster. One other point is that um, I want to kind of elaborate more on that idea of space. Um, I think more important. There's a lot of important aspects about sixes, but I think space is something that's very heavily undervalued, or not thought about at lower levels. If you see players who are like holding the point, but they're way the fuck away from you, can I swear? I swore anyway. Like,
There's
take the space, right? It's free real estate, and this is something that soldiers should try to think about too, right? If you're jumping into a new area, you don't have to jump into an enemy. You don't have to jump, very aggressively. You want to find that nice little balance of like an aggressive jump but a passive land, right? So say here on second, right, you're jumping. Say they're like holding pretty far back. Their team is holding on bats, and you're pushing through lower. Maybe instead of like jumping over that fence onto the logs, you jump and you sort of like aggressively jump, but you land on that little fence, or you land on the shack, right? That's an area that's close enough that like your team can like then walk into that space relatively uncontested, but like enough that like the team that you're pushing into, like they can't as reasonably contest you, because like when you got the high ground, we all know how important high ground is. High ground is very important, by the way, but it's just like little things, right? Buying up the space, taking the space that they give you, and doing it aggressively and in a coordinated fashion is like can win you games too. Especially if you notice that teams are just like way passive or really aggressive. Like if they're really aggressive, punish them. If they're really passive, punish them. Take the real estate, win the round, take home the championship, get the girl. That's a joke. You don't get girls from playing this game.
true.
Oh
True,
God.
true.
Oh. Shout outs to my girlfriend, by the way.
No worries.
All
But
right,
let's go
rosters. Are we
straight to the
looking at
match.
rosters now? What's the roster?
Yeah, we're gonna go straight into the game actually. With that being said, I do have the rosters up, so I will quickly go over each team's roster. It is currently Gully Gamers versus Bombing in 2. We do have I believe we do have 9 players on the server. You know, players are piling in. We actually do have 10 now. But for bombing in 2, we have Dr. Cinnamon, we have Sviss, uh, Peepoo, interesting name. I like it though. Mothman, Zornix, and PNG. But on the side of Gully Gamers, you know, these guys are one of the undefeated teams in Newcomer. I think one of the only two at 3-0. And their roster is, well, there was a bit of a roster shakeup before this match, but you know, they do have the players that they do need aside from their medic ringer. But their flank scout, their roster is 32-23. Wiggles the dog, Black, Rowdy, Fanboy, or FM that is, and Mel, who is their medic ringer. So sadly, I believe one of their players are in the chat. Shout out to you for thanking us for casting your match. It's a shame that you couldn't be here to be broadcasted for the first time in TF2, I would assume. But it's good having you here, and it's good to have these two teams here. You know, it's a newcomer. Most teams generally don't have the chance at this level to be broadcasted, but this for these 12 players, it might be the first time being casted. And you know, having been casted myself, I remember I think back in the ECA Open, my playoffs game was casted in the round of 16, and I was pretty excited and hyped, and that kind of drove my motivation to play really well in that game. And obviously, it's nice to look back at that stream and clip your plays if you were caught on cam. So a really big opportunity for these two teams here.
Yeah, and it's you know, like I said in the intro, I think that you know, the game sixes, like all the levels really need the support, right? So being able to show like the quote grassroots side of the games, like the players who are like really getting into it, because it's like, you know, I've played TF2 for entirely way too much of my life. I think if I look at my my you have the game badge, right? It would say like 2009. If we're counting Xbox, it'd be 2007. I'm fucking old, man. Um, you know, but I like you. I remember like the first time I was casted. I remember watching back the cast of the Oz Fortress Season 30 Open Grand Final, where I happened to have won the championship that season. Great accomplishment for me. Um, and it's like it really is kind of special to go in and see people like talking over your gameplay, and like when you make a good, like, oh, that was a really smart bomb, or you know, what a surf, or like when you mess up, you know, kind of laughing about it in retrospect. um, and it's like, you know, it's sixes is such a great game, and you know, it's a something that I've really gotten a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment out of. So to sort of shine a light on what the next generation of players are, you know, it's something that I love.
Right, and for those who don't know, by the way, and are just tuning into the stream, it you might be asking, why are we covering amateur and newcomer? Well, just as Jazz said, it's not only beneficial for these players, but actually we do want to stretch that idea to the fact that this is geared towards newer players. You know, these are the audience that we're gearing towards for this project is newer players who are new to TF2 and might not really know all the top level players, but they want to know how the game is played at the level that they are coming into if they were to ever start competitive TF2 and sixes. So we try to dumb it down and try to, you know, give that that foray into sixes for these players. So it's very important for them to, you know, get that first taste of TF2, not just through playing the game itself, but also through a broadcast scenario. But we are going live between Gully Gamers versus Bombing into. I'm going to shoot a quick prediction here. I'll just predict 5-2 for Gully Gamers. I do know a few of the players of the team. Jazz, how about you?
Did they change the round timer?
Yes, it is now the
Okay,
5-minute round timer.
sorry, yeah, that's the first thing I noticed. I don't have a prediction. I predict we're gonna see a good game.
Yeah, and we're already heading into the first mid, and right now, Bombing and 2 are going for the aggressive high ground control, and the soldiers on the side of Gully Gamers are regressing in response. And right now, it's just not going well for either team. They're bombing one by one, but eventually the frags are going to go out in favor of Gully Gamers. It's a 3v3 on point, but look at all this ground that Gully Gamers has taken, and it's just forced the players on Bombing and 2 to back out all the way to second.
Yeah, that's one of those moments. Once those two, once Mothman and Peepoo happen to have gone in and died, that's when you need that. That's where we're talking about coordination in the pregame. You know, that's when you need to like flip the switch. Okay, they've just fed two. We're gonna like force 6 into them, right? So,
Right.
but it was kind of a scrappy fight. It didn't really seem like each player knew who they needed to be shooting at, and so as a result, like the PNG gets out. You know, he probably should have died there just because of like the sheer numbers. But it's important, like in those instances, once like you get those player advantages, to sort of all group up, push across the point, sort of in a unified fashion, and try to get whatever frags you can get. But looks like they're trying to push through lower. They did send in a sack. They got Mothman down really weak, but they weren't able to follow up on that damage, and so they've lost Rowdy out of this. And you know, playing it smart, looking okay. You know what? This push isn't on. We're gonna back out a little bit, and you know, see what the next play is.
For
And
those who
already,
don't
like,
know, yeah, for those who don't know, they were actually trying to push through lower, and generally when you try to support your roamer for a sack, and you try, and what Gully Gamers was trying to do was they were trying to just draw eyes by pushing their combo through lower, and that's a way to get a successful sack off, distract and let your roamer go in off of that distraction.
now they do have to be careful here because they, for a few seconds rather, they didn't have anybody watching, saw it, but it looks like they're just going to be taking this Uber exchange. Very interesting. Nothing really gotten out of it. Pipu and Quiggles both go down, but the collapse, is it on? Can they get anything else out of this? They get the demo almost, actually. No, he was 1 health. What was interesting there was the red team bombing too. Looks like they were pushing. Holy shit! Big bomb in by Rowdy. Can he pick up the med? No, he doesn't. But he's bought the space.
Yeah, and right now they're trying to get through. And Fanboy flanked all the way from bridge onto Bass. He's currently on the scout, and he'll get the pick on the Dr. Cinnamon, and that's left PNG on an island alone. But Swifts comes in from second point and brings PNG out through lower. So while it was a good flank, while Fanboy did choose to shoot the scout first, it bought his team the ability to get into second.
Yeah, now I mean they've picked off. They've gotten second out of this, but they're down. They're down 1 player, and it looks like they're just happy to back out of this and give up that space. You know, they'll get their forward spawns, and they can re-push soon. Rowdy going in for another sack, almost gets that second rocket off, but I think that was kind of like a roamer sack that we were talking about in the pregame, where it's just like not really supported by your team. Just kind of going just for the sake of it. Swifts has to be careful. This demo's not watching the entrance of Saw. Plaque has to be careful. Swifts came in through Saw. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. So they pick off Fanboy, and a big bomb in by the other red soldier. Great surf by Mel, and they get forced. The red team does, and this is perfect if you're goalie gamers, because you can just back out, rebuff, and then push back in with a full Uber advantage to your name.
Yeah, look at that as they're going through lower right now, leading on both their scouts and their soldier and Rowdy. They've gone through lower and they forced, and as a reaction to that, bombing into tries to send their flank in for a second. They do get the force off successfully, but they've already lost their flank for it. So they're going to try to back out all the way, and the demo's going to get caught out towards lower from Quiggles and 32. So great focus fire from both the scouts. If they deny the demo here, which is not a concept we talked about in the map review, they could walk in a second for free, which is what they're already doing. And they might catch up Mothman here towards Bats, Quiggles, and Demoman, Plaque, but looks like Mothman will eventually die to Quiggles in lobby. So that was a great chase from Quiggles. They won't be able to deny the demo in a second, but they have chopped him off in the forwards because they do have their projectile classes already on second. And they're pushing out right now, Jazz. Are bombing into.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because a bunch of players, that was an instance of like kind of less than adequate coordination, because they needed to cap mid. They didn't have anybody capping mid, and then the player that they did have capping mid, which was a soldier, decided to go forwards. They just gonna scout back, and the med got disconnected. It's all sorts of a bit of a mess, but that's okay, right? And now, well, they're actually just using the bombing in 2, pushing in 1. Wait, is there a back cap on? 32 on last, taking a fight. Does he beat PP Poo Poo? He's on the back cap. Does he get it? No, he doesn't.
So nice direct.
Clutch. Yeah,
but in the meantime, they have gotten the force on the second.
that was an interesting play. Interesting series of events. I love newcomer. What can I say? One thing I will say that Plaque could be doing for goalie gamers is really having a more like trap off Saw impetus. He kind of gets distracted. He'll go to shoot lower again, and then he'll be Saw, and then he'll go back to lower again. I think he really needs to make like Saw his bitch and like lock that shit off, because a lot of players are just sort of able to leak in for free. They do get I don't know if they get forced. They use on second. Doesn't really look like they're going to get anything. The demo's caught out. He actually feeds a Saw too. Oh my god, incredible. And then PP Poo Poo going in for a big bomb. Mel has no idea what's going on, and then dies because of it. But they've dropped 2, and this is just this is fun.
It's an interesting push, at least to say the least, because there's gullygamers tried to Uber on a second to catch up the players falling back on bats, but when you see a team that's already falling back through bats and you can't really bridge that gap between your team's Uber and their team falling back, it's not generally advisable to Uber unless you know for a sure fact that you're going to catch up the medic. So they thought they could close the space, but if you don't have a demo or soldier jumping preemptively into that Uber, there's no chance you'll get that medic, especially if they're falling back in the lobby there.
Yeah, and it's the game's kind of at a fever pitch at the moment. Neither team is really settled. Oh, big drop. Rowdy wait, how did
the medic walked in too early ahead of his team? And
no, he walked in too early, but on the kill cam, it was like an environmental death, right? So it wasn't just like I ate a direct type of. So
well, he got shot from the air, so it may have been that soldier. That soldier pushed back with the rocket. That crazy.
Maybe I have had those moments where you just jump and then you get hit by a rocket and then just smash into the ground, like even though you only jumped like a half foot. So that was interesting. They've got full Uber advantage. They're going to use in. They used in before the demo jump, so they picked up the heavy. They were listening to me in the pregame, and now they need to make sure that. Oh my God, the demo's running Pain Train. How based is that? That's so goated. I love that. I will say just 2 things. I think Plaque, like I said, he could be locking off the entrance into Saw a lot more. I think that needs to be his greater focus. And then Mel needs to like hard grind soldier versus soldier ammo mod so that they're better at predicting the surfs and just reading soldier movement. The second mid.
Let's get an eye on this mid. Yeah, let's get an eye on Rowdy here as he takes high ground. This is the Roamer for gullygamers. And you can see he aggressively takes high ground, but it's not. He kind of takes damage too early, and that forces him to fall back and get arrowed. And you can see what the game plan here is for gullygamers. They're sending the soldiers to react to the aggressive bombs from bombing in 2. They do get the pick off of that, and they do lose Fanboy eventually to a counter aggression. But look at this. They've used that opportunity to walk
what a flank by 32, just gets onto the demo uncontested, and now there's 1 scout on the med. He's whiffing every single shot. Quiggles, do you need a copy of Kovacs? I'll buy you one. I won't buy you one. But it was sort of an instance of like, they got that first pick, that soldier top left, and then they take that space, and I believe it was 32-23 came in with a flank from lower and got onto the demo uncontested, drops him down with no issues, and like they win the mid off of that. They didn't pick up the med again. Quiggles with his shots, but that's okay, right? You've won the mid, and now the push is on. They don't have to give up the space. They've managed to get the force, and then Mel actually, I guess, uses because he's
look at that HP
in
though.
no man's land. Yeah. This HP is not it for goalie gamers.
Oh, but Will Rowdy flanks from Saul. He gets the pick on the PNG, so that's a pick on the post Uber change, and that enables gullygamers to walk back in. I like what their soldiers doing here, taking the high ground and walking the scouts across point and just cleaning up all these players that are just caught out and not falling back in time. So they could technically keep out this aggression through lower with their combo.
Yeah, they balled up really well, and really protected their med. Mel could probably bait a little bit more going through these entrances, but it's like, that they recognize that opportunity that had opened up and acted on it very quickly is what I like to see more than just like baiting through chokes.
From gullygamers' perspective, they do have full Uber at.
Yeah, they just need to make sure they spot this and again have an idea of like which way they want to go. Looks like they're coming in lower again. Mel really likes to walk in doorways first. Yeah, they have really shown their hand like way too early. This sentry has not gone down either. Sentry finally goes down. Heavy's alone on the point. Can he go down too? The frag's going left, right, and center for them. They need to clean up Mothman. There's 2 players on the point. He gets picked up. PNG, you have to go and sack for the point there. But yeah, that was kind of a scuffed Uber. It works out in the end because they do get the frags. I just think one thing that they could do is like they could just Uber through that doorway. What I saw was Mel came through the doorway and like was like, "This is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do," and then they did it. And it's like it's important to like we're gonna do this and then just commit to it. You don't have to like show as much. But so round three, third mid, 2-0 for Goalie Gamers. Uh, Exciting game so far. Just a bit patient at the moment. Going for the spam game. 2 soldiers jumping in, both landing on the shack. Mel is really weak. But both soldiers 4 bombing into have gone down. Goalie Gamers only have 1 player down, and they're walking across the point now. 32 coming in with the big flank. Can they get him in saw? No, it looks like they don't want to commit to that. Fair play, right? You know, they got the demo up. But another really good mid fight from Goalie Gamers. They did lose Mel, so they're going to be at Uber disad. So hopefully they can get this cap. But nah, 32-23. Just you know what? We're good. We're good. And now
Yeah,
they're just
bombing
setting
into
up at the
not a
defending
problem.
posture.
Bombing into is bottling up, and they've retaken mid. Kind of wish they would wait for the team a little bit before they push here in a mid, but it looks like they've cleared up everything as they do get the hiding flank factor in 32, so they will retake mid. Right now, they're all capping mid, which is not ideal. What you want to do if you guys have Uber, you kind of want to just leave your flanks at the cap, and that's what they're doing. They're gonna push through lower right now, but the Uber ad has dwindled down to 50%. They have spotted out both soldiers, and you do see that soldier from Mothman bombing from lower into best to create space, and but you know, bombing in two's combo stood there around in lower at the doors, and they just allowed Fanboy and Low Rowdy to sack and just get the force off.
Yeah, I think there it's sort of another instance of like I think if you take linear paths from like second into from like point to point, that's what's gonna like buy you rounds, right? Not sort of hesitating. Hesitating is a great killer in sixes. The big Uber coming out in lower though, looks like they had gotten forced and they're not really getting any. Well, they got the demo and Mothman, but can they pick up any other players? It doesn't really look like it. They might get second off of this, but that flip flop Uber, um, you know, you take that if you're in bombing it too.
Yeah, and you do see here from Gully Gamers, this isn't conventional when you guys are at Uber dishead, but they are going to try to go on this early before Bombing in 2's PNG gets the Uber. They do get the early pick on the Mothman, but right now with PNG at 85%, if they delay this push too long, and this is what you see out of the soldiers, they are going to react and try to go for the medic. They're all inning and they do get PNG, catching him out towards Saw. That's what the whole objective of the push was, to kill PNG before he got Uber.
Yeah, and they did that to great effect. I think if you're PNG, I mean, if you're bombing into there, I think it's perfectly acceptable to give up that point and come back and re-push once you get the Uber advantage in your favor. Sort of like what I'm seeing a lot from Mel gets 2
Oh
solid.
no, no!
That's so good. What I'm seeing from, well, we'll talk about it at halftime. But yeah, so I think goalie gamers are right now they're in the driver's seat. That they sort of settled the game a little bit. It was very frantic at the early stages, and right now it's like it's sort of settled down a little bit. Goalie gamers are in the driver's seat. Bombing into is not out of this, right? They definitely have like the ability to turn this around. I think they just need to clean it up, stop hesitating when they're going for these pushes, and maybe just I don't know, just sort of be aware of what the threat is, right? They're pushing into mid. We're about to come up on our Uber. What are they going to do? They're going to sack for our men, right? And so they end up using out from lower. The demo just gets levitated. That's another instance of like confusion, right? They haven't got an idea of what they want to go for. So the demo does drop in this Uber. They still have players up.
Yeah, but they're bombing directly into the Uber, are
Yeah.
bombing into two, so they lost a lot more points than I thought they would, considering how bad that Uber was at the start. And this scout is not getting punished. 32 goes in, he gets the pick
Oh
on
my
PNG.
god! And
And a follow from Lil Rowdy.
Man. You win this. You win this 32. Oh, well, you got the spawners in now, so maybe you don't win this. Mel, you need to get the fuck out of here. Just leave. Just leave. Why are you in? Why are you in?
No! She's gonna get out. She will get out through bad. She's currently dodging around spam, but she does make it out in a second. If she had regrouped with her team, she would have probably had more than 20% ad. And this scout from Bombing into Swift's a very unideal hero play to go for, especially when you're on the scout class. But I want to point out the problem with Bombing into's last holes. They generally tend to bomb towards the Uber before it even fades, and everybody's looking towards the Uber. and that opens up a lot of flank doors for gully gamers to abuse, and that's what happened in the post Uber push.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. It's like you know that they're invincible, so like, don't shoot at them. Look at where the other doorways are. Like, because you can very easily like pick up one or two flank players, like when they're not in the Uber, when they're pushing in, just because it's like you're not distracted, right? I will say, bomb goalie gamers, they're using in right now. I'll get to that point later.
Yeah, great airship
That's
from Gulp Fanboy.
Yeah, so that was a good bomb. They pick up Mothman. The sentry gun is down too, and now like the second part of like this push is initiated. Rowdy gets a frag. Yep, there we go. 3-0 halftime. Um, I was gonna say that first push, it was again some confusion over like what they wanted to go for because they had the heavy, they had the sentry up. I think more often than not, going for the sentry first is probably the better play just because it is aimbot in a sense. And then going for the heavy, you saw the scout make a beeline for the sentry, and the demo tried to jump into the heavy and just gets levitated, right? So it's like that's one of those instances. Being coordinated, knowing what you're trying to get out of these Ubers before you initiate them is really valuable. Another thing, Mel is pretty consistently like walking in front of her team in these pushes. You don't, as a med main who has made those mistakes many times. How about there's that. How's that for an alliteration? I can't speak. Anyway, as a med main who's made that mistake many times, there we go. You really want your players to be leading the push. The beam stretches really far. Players don't realize that. So like going in, jumping, and it's again sort of like you're showing your plans before you initiate them. There's like one, it was like the second push where they got the second round. Mel had walked out and they were standing in lower for like 3 seconds before they used. So it's like just they're gonna use, or no, you're gonna use, they're gonna know you're gonna use, and they're gonna use yada yada yada. So just use, right? You don't have to like I said, show what you're gonna do for a few seconds before you actually initiate it. And it's like that's one of those things that when you're playing against a better team, and they also well they constantly going in front, like okay, well I don't know, we'll just shoot them first, right? We'll force them before they can actually use. So it's stuff like that. It's just a lot of like tiny things that really comes with time and experience. But that's why we're doing trial by fireside, right? Because we can give this sort of feedback so that when they watch it, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I won't stand in front of my players while we're pushing as the medic going forward.
And to go off that point, honestly, on the side of bombing on 2, I feel like we've been giving too much criticism to gully gamers, even though they've had a 3-0. But we do need to give something to bombing on 2. Aside from their lack of positioning or awareness on last pushes, it feels like the the scouts haven't, or it's not just the scouts who are at fault for this. It is also based on your medic's positioning, and that's all generally because medics tend to levitate towards where their players are. But PNG has been dying a lot to soldier bombs from the gully gamers soldiers, but there are also times where 32, the flank side for gully gamers, does sneak in around. He gets to pick on the demo, which leads to a cascading effect of, we got to pick on crucial player of their combo, then we start collapsing on the rest of the combo, we get the medic eventually. But it's generally advisable as a medic, not to anticipate soldier bombs, position yourself in anticipation of soldier bombs. And it's also the job of your scouts to also be tight around you and basically be the medic's eyes for what you see in the skybox. Because, like what Jazz is saying for Mel, you generally don't want to walk ahead of your team. You want to let your team be the eyes for you. And generally, as the medic, that's your pocket scout. So on the side of bombing in 2, Swifts and Dogger Sentiment, if needed, whichever one's the flying scout, should start maybe trying to double scout combo around their medic, because it feels like in a lot of these post fights they aren't anticipating the late soldier bombs on the side of gully gamers.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Of like, I remember there's one push where they were pushing in through lower, and Mel had gotten bombed, and I think I made the comment that like they're totally unaware of like that the bomb was happening. It was just like they died, right? And that's one thing that comes with time. One thing I do think is very important for medics, but also just for all of my advice is for medics, by the way. That's where my expertise is, and I'm not even an expert at it. But for any player, like getting very proficient with the main combat classes, namely Scout and Soldier, because that's what everything else is built off of. But you can get good at demo as well. Is really what brings your mechanics like to that next level. Being able to anticipate like the rocket, being able to anticipate how much damage you can do, how much damage you can take, yada yada yada. When to time your surfs is very important. I tell new players when they're getting into sixes, it's like the way you're gonna play is like by playing more sixes, by doing demo reviews, and by like doing MGE, like MGE and DM servers. Um, but like my old practice routine, I used to just do like 20 minutes of Scout v Soldier, Soldier v Soldier, Scout v Scout ammo mod, right? Because that's just like raw mechanics training at its finest. Um, but so um, I think both meds could probably stand to do more Soldier versus Soldier MGE. Um, but I think B2 and goalie gamers, their soldiers are they're doing a lot of work. I've been impressed by the bombs of both PP Poo Poo and Mothman. I do think at times that especially on the mid fights they could maybe wait to initiate until like more damage has been done. Um, but they're certainly capable players, and I think as they get better and as they learn the game, all these players have a bright future.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you caught it on the mids, but there was a game plan for gully gamers to react to the aggressive bombs from bombing it
Yeah,
too.
I
And
saw
generally,
that.
when you're Mothman and Peepoo, if you know that, sometimes it's good just to go for a high bomb rather than just try to take high ground control. Because if you know the other team is going to send their flanker, whoever, to fight you as you take that ground, it's better to give up that ground and just bait them into doing that. And knowing that, actually, you could just counter aggress, just counter jump. It's fine as a soldier to play like you know the like an unregulated version of MG where you're not supposed to counter jump if a soldier jumps you. You're
Yeah,
supposed to just go for the aim. It's okay to counter jump in matches. It's okay to play like a coward, jump away and give yourself the advantage to recommit and basically kill the players that are aggressing on you because it feels like Mothman or Peepoo are bombing just for the sake of bombing rather than,
yeah,
bombing smart. When you're bombing, you need to make the decision of, why are you going for this bomb and what effect is it going to have if it's successful and if it's not. They tend to bomb really early on mids and they die so early that it forces their team to, just either walk forward or fall back all the way to second. And generally, the former is the choice that's being made. It seems like bombing into just try to keep fighting, but it's not helpful to fight when you're literally down the only source of high bombs and aerial damage aside from your demo.
yeah, and it sort of harkens to a point that we made earlier, where it's like just because you're the soldier doesn't mean that your life is like isn't as valuable as other players. Like soldiers do a lot. Like I think especially with a soldier with like good mechanics, and these players have good mechanics. Like a good soldier is so impactful. They kind of get memed on because like, oh well, soldier, they jump in and die, but it's like, no, a soldier who can like do his role is really really powerful. That was kind of a roundabout way of saying the same thing twice, but um, so being more patient or kind of playing anti MGE where you do the counter bombs, you do play a bit more quote cowardly, like whatever it takes to get the dub, right? That's all I ever cared about as a player. Like I don't care if we have to play like the biggest cowards on the planet and set up shop like 3-0 up. Like if we win the game, then like that's what matters, right? Um,
Right.
so I think I think PP Poo Poo and Mothman they could they should be having a better game plan than just like high bombing into the med. But that said, it the reason that they keep on going for those plays is because it works, because Mel isn't either properly anticipating or properly reacting to a double bomb, and that's really hard to react to, right? That's like Snakewater is like my least favorite mid, even though Snakewater is one of my more favorite maps, because it's just one of those just like, oh well, I guess I'm dead. I'll see you guys in like 10 seconds or whatever. It's one of those things like if it works once, shame on me. It works, or if it works once, shame on you. Works twice, shame on me. If it keeps on working, well then I need to look at the demos at some point. Um, So it does seem like B2 is a bit more of a DM team, and goalie is a bit more coordinated. But I do think that B2 they have the ability to turn this around. They've got the players and the chops to do it. They just need to tighten it up a little bit and get an early round. If they get an early round, then I think it's anybody's game.
Yeah, for this mid, I'm gonna keep my eye on bombing in 2 soldiers, so I'm gonna keep it specifically on Mothman and Peepoo. It's very important to see, what these guys are doing that's, not working for them, but they are going for an unconventional rollout. So you see here on the side of bombing 2, they are going for the catwalk rollout, and Mothman's actually gonna go deep straight into the medic from gullygamers, but nobody's there for Mal. But they've just chosen to aggress all the way onto bombing 2's players. They just ignored the bombing soldiers and just walked forward and wiped out bombing 2. That's not something That's not something we mentioned in the map review. But if you tend to see the enemy team's double soldier bomb aggressive mid, you can just walk forward and just kill the rest of the players that are not in the bomb.
Yeah, it's one of those things it's like this is one thing I had to learn as a plea. Ah, yes, Black. There we go. Thank God. So they pick up PNG. It's one of those things like if a soldier's bombing you, you don't have to like backpedal. You can just walk under the players, and it's the same concept there, right? If they're constantly double bombing, like instead of like reacting to them, just all right, bye bye, walk forward, right? Just completely go around. Big bomb coming in from PP Poo Poo gets the force out, but this is not a good force, man. That is not a good force. They can just steamroll this straight into last, which looks like what they're doing. Meld gets disconnected from Rowdy. It doesn't even matter. They've got 3x on the point. They've just got a heavy. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was talking about early in the map review. Like, you don't want to be sacking in those situations. Like, you need to just, we just got to play tight. We got to play smart. And that was not a smart play.
Right.
I am HO.
For the game. Let's keep our eye on Fanboy here and Lil Rowdy. The soldiers from Gully Gamers. It feels like every time bombing in 2 soldiers have bombed, they've reacted by bombing in munition, and it's just been working out for these guys. So it's gonna be right now just pretty much the same mid, but actually it's gonna be double soldier bomb from Fanboy and Lil Rowdy. Fanboy lands on check, but he gets instant denied, and bombing 2 have actually backpedaled to bait in these soldier bombs. And while Plaque tries to support them by walking across point, it looks like bombing 2 has used Gully Gamer's strategy against them by letting the soldiers initiate and then killing them as they walk in.
Yeah, well, it didn't seem like there was any follow-up from the rest of their team to really make that worth it. Plaque did go down in that mid-fight, so when that... Oh, no. Oh, Jesus. All right, well, we're going to have a scrappy DM fight, so let me watch this, and then I'll make whatever point I was going to make.
Yeah, it's okay here if PNG uses if he has to.
Yeah. Well, they need to make sure, like, if they're using this, if they have to use it, like, they get the frags that make using it worth it. And like they've dropped 2 scouts out of this, so they're not going to be able to steamroll this in immediately. Rowdy comes in. Yep, they get the force, so that's a good force. If they can hold it, not having those
scouts. Though. Bombing 2 doesn't have any scouts.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't have those scouts, so they can't take that initiative really quickly. I would still push this just to almost as a shit test. Like, you don't have to worry about the scout who's behind. Maybe now you do, but he's feeding if PP Poo Poo wants it. And they've dropped 3, so like. This is really good, and Mothman's playing the point.
No, there's no follow-up. They have no respawners.
If they would have stayed in there and say the demo stays alive, like as soon as those players collapse on the point, then you collapse on the players that are collapsing, right? But unfortunately, like they dropped too many players, or they maybe didn't feel as confident so as to stay in and continue that fight. I do like that they did try to take the initiative anyway and press the issue. It's just maybe the coordination wasn't there, and losing the demo is like pretty rough. So now Mothman does go down, or Fanboy goes down. PP Poo picks him up. Quiggles feeding for fun, maybe?
No, I think they were trying to push out a second. Fanboy got stuck in the air there, and they all tried to support him, but they went in one by one, and it was just a labored push all in of itself. So that just was going into the pressure from top left this time.
Yeah, this is another thing. Like, you should still take this while they're down 2. Now, I wouldn't use in there, but like we've had.
Look at how much time they have. Look at how much ground they have.
This is true, and they've got sticks on point. They get the Uber's forced. Yeah, but they're not getting any sort of frags or any players to like make this worth it. I would not have used there, is what I'm gonna say. I think there, because they were down soldiers, that does buy them that space, and it's like one of those things where it's like, it's free real estate, take the space. It seemed like and these things happen very quickly, right? So like it's hard to be like, oh well, this is wrong and I would have done it perfectly. But it's like in those instances, if you're going to be pushing that, you really want to make sure that you are taking stock of this situation. Where are they holding? Where are we going to push? And how do we make this work? And it seemed like they're just like, okay, well, we're just going to push this, right? Takes half a second to scout things out, and if you can scout things out, like you can turn those does this work? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, into like, yeah, this is going to work because we are beasts, because we're nasty.
We're nice with it. We're built correctly. But Lil Rowdy there did try to go. I don't know what if he was doing prodding around in kitchen, but he's gonna die to set. Gonna die from the flank. And look at this. Bombing 2 are gonna react by pushing Saw. Gullygamers just playing really passive actually, and that just gives up Saw. And Mel feels the need to force off of taking some spam, and that's just gonna force Fanboy to take this really bad exchange into them. Mel might get caught on the post super because she has to climb up from the Saw onto Bats, but somehow she makes it out alive.
Yeah,
Players from lower aren't capitalizing on it, and they wipe. I'm not sure what happened there for Bombing in 2 because they had the better Uber by all means.
I don't think they took the space. They kind of dilly-dallied in a choke point, that being the entrance out of Saw into second. And it's one of those things where it's like, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but hesitating gets you killed. You're either in or you're out, and if you're in, like, good, go. If you're out, not, then leave. I saw P&G, they took this exchange, they flashed a lot of players, and he just sort of waited in that doorway, and 32-23, just playing as patient as you like, just staying in the, oh, wait till the Uber's over, 3, 2, 1, 2 shots him. Bada bing, bada boom. So, like I said, if you're going to be pushing, regardless of what doorway you're pushing in or out of, you need to make the decision. Somebody has to make a decision. Are we in or are we out? Call that, and then everybody else commits to it. Everybody has to commit to. No half measures. They're going to use
Gullygamers.
Fanboy. Oh, good shots, and this is pretty chaotic already. They get that force, but they picked up PP Poo Poo and Dr. Cinnamon. Mel is in no man's land though. They could go down, but the power
Wait, they had
of
a
the
soldier?
speed. I would walk back in if I was them, just for fun. Just go back into Saw, but no, they don't want to do that. Yeah, that was interesting. They used the Uber on the soldier out of Saw, and they bought themselves a lot of space. But by the time that P&G's Uber came out, they kind of weren't in any real position to like pick off whatever other players were there. So it's kind of scrappy. But it's I think that's an instance like, if you know that they're staying on the point, quickly revert back and run back through Saw and like take the fight again. But I like the initiative. The initiative is good. And they picked up Swifts and Mothman, so like this is.
Rowdy's in on second.
Yeah, he dies, but like they picked up there's so much damage going all over the place. They picked up the demo. Dr. Cinnamon was super weak. PP Poo Poo's 80 health in lobby too, and like.
PNG wasn't healing. This should be even Ubers though. Oh no.
Yeah, they could just take this if they want. I don't think they will, but they could.
Yeah, but obviously that's not something you can know. Even if you're good at reading Ubers, you don't anticipate the other team to not know how to build pretty well. But that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, but they had the demo advantage, and if the demo's down and they had picked up two other players as well, like, I think you press that, just to. It's almost like it's sort of like it's testing the waters, right? Is this a push that we can pull off, right? And like, if the push is on, then like perfect, like you've got the space already, then you can just continue the push. If the push isn't on, you haven't committed far enough in to like make it to be past the point of no return, right? Bomb from Rowdy coming in, gets the force, great force.
No,
great
how did
bomb,
that
too.
happen in a sentry?
He bombed in from top right, and it was a nice little speed shot, and the sentry wasn't.
Yeah, but they
fast
had
enough.
no scout with him. They had no scout with the medic either, which is so unfortunate.
Mel, you love walking in before your team does, don't you, girl? So the Uber does come out. What do they get out of this?
Yeah, there's.
Why'd you flash the scout?
Oh,
Sorry.
no. It's gonna be a very hectic Uber. They didn't really get any post Uber positioning. They also went for a point, and obviously that flash didn't help. Denying that extra point time that they could have had.
Oh my
And
God.
because the Uber was bad, they just wiped for it.
If Quiggles isn't flash there, then this game's over. I've made that mistake plenty of times though, Mel. You're good. You're good. I'll probably make this mistake again at some point because I was gonna say I don't know if it's a gamer word, but you know what I'm gonna say. Not the sharpest tool in the shed. How about that? Yeah, so kind of a flub push. It could have been really good. Again, Mel just loves to walk in front of her players in these pushes. I do like this positioning though. They're holding very far back. They've got Rowdy, who's sort of the sacrificial lamb if he wants to be. But Mel and his combo or their combo is well positioned to kite this if they choose to use.
Yeah, bombing in 2, already picking before they even have Uber, and Will Rowdy goes in for a
Rowdy!
surprise bomb, drops PNG, and now that's gonna enable the players from bombing in 2 to have to sack in order to salvage this
That's a
drop
great
Uber,
reserve.
but Mel's gonna live.
That's really, really good positioning. That's probably the best positioning they've had throughout the course of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, once again, like you said,
Unless
Chad.
Swifts, he's on the med for free.
Oh, he drops Mel.
Where
Mel
did your-
goes down to flank.
Where did your scouts go? What
You
happened?
could say that for bombing in 2 too.
The combo totally broke down there. Like, that's one of those instances where it's my head is in my. I go from like that was such good positioning to just like head in my hands. Um, Jesus, that was kind of funny. I'll give it to that. That was pretty funny. But that's one of those things where it's like one, they didn't react quickly enough, so they're not as match sharp as they should be. Again, play
I
more.
like Black's traps.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting trap, but it's also like what happened to the scouts in that instance where it's like Mel's alone by themselves in Saw, where that scout's able to get on them.
Oh, but look at Fanboy. Fanboy's or Will Rowdy's in a position to get the force. He bombs from pipe on the bats. But
32 is just booking it straight for last two. There's traps on the point. He's taking this DM fight. Oh, he wins it too.
Wait, he can probably get it. He can probably get it. The scout goes back to fight. It's 2 scouts on last versus 32. Actually, it's a scout and a soldier, but he'll die for it. Oh, this is a good try though.
Yeah, the traps. I mean, once those traps were there, it's like it's kind of a rough situation. But that's one of those instances where I like the idea of just like trying to wrap him and back cap him. Uber does come out. Yeah, and Mel does not have yet.
Oh, but it's good. She uses her scout to have that extra speed buff, and she gets out through Saw, so she's given her team the Uber.
And then Plaque is behind in lower. What's going on here? Oh, he hits
he's holding his own.
too.
They're just walking into him.
What a goober this guy is. I love it. I would just go for the. He's got the pain train anyway. Why are you trying to DM?
Yeah, and I'm not surprised they're not trying to contest mid right now because he's brought back 2 players, and right now his team is just licking their feet around in Saw. And
Yeah,
now they're only getting back into mid, but they've lost their down Plaque on the flank already in 32.
Yeah, if I was Plague, I would just say, screw these other players. I'm just gonna go for the back cap. Big bomb in. Does he get the final rocket? Oh no, but they do use here. But this is.
Over aggressive Uber, and that right now Mel might die on point to this flanking scout, and there's a soldier bombing in from Saw too. That is gonna be Pipu, and Pipu's gonna go deep onto her, and she should die. She should die.
Oh,
no?
there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
That was an aggressive Uber when you didn't have to use, and you didn't have the point. So thumbs down from me. But this is also, again, it's like this is newcomer. These games are going to be scrappy and very chaotic. I mean, it's at the point where it's like I'm watching it and I don't know what to talk about at times. It's like, what's going on here? It's very chaotic. But these, I think. Actually, I don't know what I think.
Yeah, Fanboy tried to block from pipe there, but he gets levitated into the air by two scout players. So that's the power of a scout for you. And right now they're going to get through lower, are bombing it too. Look at this. It's going to be a traditional. Oh no, PNG walks in ahead of his team, but it doesn't matter because nobody's looking towards lower. And it's going to be a deep demo bomb on the side of bombing it too. Looks like they're focusing different things because there's a heavy on point. The scout's focusing alone, but Quiggles will go down. So that's the heavy down. Right now they're throwing all their players on point though, are bombing it too. You don't really like to see that, and that's just forced all their players to be sectioned out by these soldier bombs from Fanboy and Lil Rowdy. They're gonna die for that.
Yeah, these last pushes are. It was sort of another instance of like.
Fist back cap though. Hold up.
Do they get it? No. Can they get Mel at least? No, they don't.
Sorry. Continue your point though.
Yeah, it was just sort of another. The attention split. Zornix is going for the spawn camp, trapping them out of spawn, and and the other player, the scout, is like trying to kill the heavy on point with the brass beast. So like, good luck. And that's just one of those things where it's like, if the full focus fire is there, then like they win that round because they've taken the one player out on point. Everybody else is like, bye bye. But because the attention split, because the coordination isn't there, it's just like bad news. That should have been a round, in my opinion.
Yeah, you just saw there on your screen. Looks like gullygamers tried to use that Uber once again on bombing 2 as they were falling out from lower, thinking, hey, we can put a medic here. But turns out they've already booked it out to mid. Just having a soldier only in that Uber, a soldier can easily won't be able to cover that space as well as, a demo and scout Uber. So that just leapfrogs the situation. And for those who don't know, the term leapfrogging is basically when you guys exchange Ubers to take the same point over and over again between both teams. Yeah, right now we're in a leapfrog situation with bombing 2 pushing lower. What's gonna be dope?
Can it work out for them? So Rowdy coming. What are you?
Gets the force off at least somehow.
Yeah, he gets he sees 2 soldiers bombing in, and then he just uses. So I mean, it's worked out if they can get this point and then like take the rest of the space. Like I would put like they're down 3 players. Like
Yeah, they need.
So they definitely need to like take that space, take the initiative a little bit more. And now it's just sort of like a bad situation because the rest of the team isn't there to help them out with the rest of the push. They do get Mel to force the Uber in order to stop the point, but these are hits the 3. That ragdoll went pretty far up too. I love it. Yeah, goalie is definitely just playing a lot tighter at the moment versus bombing in 2. Bombing in 2 seems a bit flustered and they're trying. It seems like they're throwing stuff at the wall to see if it sticks, and nothing's really sticking. Goalie is definitely just a bit more coordinated, and like that's why they're 4-0 up. And bombing in 2 like has to make something happen with this next push, whatever comes happen. Like they have to get
13 minutes left.
take this into a round.
13 minutes left, guys. Remember, this is RGL is 30 minutes per half, 2 halves. Whoever is the first to 5 or whoever has the most wins at the end of regulation wins. But right now, in terms of realistic chances, bombing in 2's chances of tying it up are bad. So that's what are pretty low. So that's why they have to push already on an even situation into lower. But look at that soldier bomb. It's just a single soldier bomb from low rowdy, and because bombing in 2 scout was not forward there. I don't know why, but it seems like they're backing away from the soldier bombs rather than actually like walking forward to shoot them. So they get forced. Mel has to pop in response, but that's okay because when you kill 3 players for the price of 1, you're in a good spot.
No, yeah. Yeah, I think again, like I said, I think learning the soldier stuff, like just do soldier versus soldier ammo mod, and like get comfortable like surfing the rockets, even if surfing an ammo mod is cringe. I get it,
but hey, at least they're pushing the second button.
What a bomb, Mothman! Totally unaware.
Yeah, so that was a high bomb all the way from Rich, I believe. So that kills Mel walking in from Saw. PNG hits a nice surf on the soldier, but just a consolation prize when your team's down 4-0. With just your scout and soldier, you kind of have to start pushing the issue right now because, on average, if you need to get 4 rounds, the minimum amount of time it takes to get 4 rounds in this situation probably is around 7 to 8 minutes. So they're gonna have to pick up the pace, and they do have full Uber ad. So obviously, I think I do want to see it. I don't want to see the lower push again because it seems like their scouts are just backing away from these soldier bombs, not willing to take the fights. So maybe it might be better for bombing 2 to take it through Saw instead. And that's, hey, look, they read my mind. I read their mind. They're walking it in through Saw. Oh no, but PNG's walking into the rollers. He's already down to 50 HP, but hopefully he does have to force because in all the case of that spam, there was a soldier above bombing from pipe, so he will have to use.
Yeah, and he drops cinnamon in that. That's not ideal. Yeah, that force was I think entirely because he sort of lost track of where he was standing under the pipe and the soldier's standing right above him, and so it's sort of like he's already pretty weak. So forcing there is probably good, better to use than not use, but it's one of those I probably could have been avoided if they were more cognizant of the threat of a soldier bombing in. Oh, Mel almost drops there. So much damage. Would have been a trap, I suppose, but
Mothman's behind in cheese though. He could go all the way to last right now, so they've used him through bridge, and Mothman's just walking all the way to last. There's 2 soldiers on last. Pipu and Mothman. They're just gonna get the back cap because when you think about it, all the players were in lobby. But they as they walk in, they just ignored the threat in cheese, even though the scout literally died to it. Quite frankly.
yeah, and it's sort of what you talked about in the pregame, where it's like when you're pushing out, you need to make sure that you're clearing all this stuff because like hiders are very good at their job if they're in the right spots, and like you don't giving up a round because of the back cap is always like a bitter pill to swallow. But next mid fight.
Yeah, it looks like look at this. It's gonna be the aggressive bombs from bombing into. It didn't work out in the first half, but it looks like it's gonna work out this time. Mothman catches out Plaque towards the blue kitchen, and right now that's gonna be trigger the response from Fanboy and Lil Ratty to get aggressive. But the scouts are just dancing around on high ground with their soldiers. Bombing into scouts and soldiers are getting all the picks, so they could keep up the issue. And hey, it's with 3 rounds in 9 minutes is definitely doable.
Yeah, well, I agree, and they're pressing the issue right now. Mel
Mouse
could
cut
take down. So weak. Yes, yes. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. And PNG gets out too. It's just Swifts who's still in. I would not be in. And so yeah, they managed to regroup with. PNG regroups with this combo, and now they've got a full Uber advantage. But goalie gamers, I think you can afford to be a bit more risky with this because you've been getting med picks pretty consistently. So it's like,
Pretty aggressive though.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can maybe be a little bit aggressive and see
Yeah.
if you can try to catch out the med. But bombing into, they're finally pushing through lower. I I think this is one of those instances where Rowdy going in. Oh yes,
No,
there we go.
that was a flank from the awning that, like you said, he gets the pick. Or no, that's from the pipe actually. They weren't looking at the height at all.
And Mel is just all the way out of dodge, like nowhere to be seen. Smart choice too, but that's one of those things where it's like, if you're pushing lower and you know that their soldiers are up,
You
that
got the
you got to be aware of those threats. And like what the game plan is. Okay, well I've got full Uber and yada yada yada, and we're pushing in lower. The soldiers are gonna bomb me, right? And being aware of that, anticipating that those choices is sort of that next stage of like evolution as both a med player and like as a team. Again, my only advice is for meds. Every other class, maybe not so much.
right here. You do want to see bombing into pushing though. With only 7 minutes left, they kind of have to press the issue. So it's either they really only have time for 1 sec. But if it were me in a 4-1 scenario, considering that Gully Gamers does not have an engineer, they just have a pyro. This is actually these are the ideal conditions to go for an even Uber Uber exchange in the last. But right now, it looks like Gully Gamers are choosing to press the issue. They're gonna meet them towards Shutter, and the Uber does come out, but Fanboy has already died in top right lobby. Looks like, oh no, the scout has been flashed on the side of bombing into, so they won't be able to get too much cap time. Too many players are committed towards the cap, and that's just gonna lead to bombing into wiping, because they commit their demo and scout the cap, and sadly they get flashed too by PNG. So that just enables Gully Gamers to have a bit of extra space here to get these caps, and Black is just two-piping everybody.
He even hits the Z+8, whatever the one is, the no voice command. He's like, no, this is my point. Mothman is going back, but I think Fanboy is on last at the moment. No, they've got Rowdy who's up, and the scout comes in too. So
That's pushing all the players back to last for Gully Gamers, so this is another dry fight that they could take.
where are your scouts, Mel? You can just drive into them if you got.
Oh no, they're too committed on the side of bombing into though, but thankfully PNG gets out. Has to drop his entire combo though. So he has nobody to drag him out really.
Yeah, and Swifts is actually body blocking Mel, and the scouts have, the players have, where are you? Okay, Mel just hit some good arrows.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
that was I'll write that down and bring it up as a note to talk about in the post. That's right, baby. We're taking notes with 5 minutes left to play.
Yeah, so this might be an unwinnable game now because with Gully Gamers having mid and there's one player behind from bombing into, there's only 3 people to defend second for bombing into. So they have to back up all the way towards bats. And low rat is just going to use that opportunity to take space. But the bomb from Peepoo from lower, that was the flanking player we were mentioning about. Gets the pick on the Mel. So bombing into, they can't afford to have an NG in last. Fist, you have to get off NG right now because you guys have to push as soon as possible.
You essentially
can't
have,
afford to last.
yeah, at this point you essentially, and I don't even know if, I don't think there's enough time, but you essentially have to, like, every time you get a pick, you turn that into a push. It's like pick, push,
Yeah.
push, pick, push. Fanboy going for last, is he, I think he's fighting some players, yeah, he dies. Rowdy's also trying to go behind, but he's going for a sack now. He gets some good rockets on PNG, but doesn't finally
Right.
get the closing shot.
Yes, they have to push in the mid right now. With 2 respawners coming in, there's only 3 people on the side of gullygamers to hold mid. And thankfully, you know, what we've noticed, by the way, is Black and Zornix could use a lot more traps because it feels like both teams have been walking in for free. So demos take note of that. Put your traps on the choke points that you expect to push, and Bombing and Seal are just going on like second gear. They have to push all the way from mid. There's no time to stop to cap. They just have to go all the way. And they're doing that saw push that you mentioned, like peeking around in saw, showing your hand, and then going towards window, jumping the lower. Oh no, but PNG, he drops towards lower.
Does he?
He anticipated the soldier bomb,
he...
and he just backs all the way into the door by lower. And he gets forced.
I want to make a note of that too. Don't backpedal. There we go.
The Mel does have Uber, and even though, you know, Bombing 2, you can't afford to sit around here and build. You have to just push in the last, even if you're at Uber descent. Because, quite frankly, you guys, I think your chances of winning the game are less than 5% at this point.
I would say
Actually,
it's
probably
0.
not.
I think it's at 0%. And that's not a knock against the team. I just don't think there's enough time on the board. At this point, any round that you get is just going to be helping for the playoff picture at the end of the season. But I really want to see, for the sake of goalie gamers, I want to see them cascade this from a last to a last. Go coast to coast and see what you can get.
Yeah, they're gonna go on the second, and they do have to force those.
Yep. Oh, they get the force. The force is good if they can, like, win it in the post fight. And, like, they've picked up all the players that they need to pick up. And, you know, 32's back in, and they just need to pick up Zornix. Yeah, that's his name, Zornix. And they do, and now send someone to finish the cap, roll into second. They need to be careful because Mothman is standing on this little rooftop, but he's so weak now. Like, you know, you sneeze on him and he dies.
You'll see here that Mothman just take the fight there. When you're at 60 HP, it's not ideal to, you know, try to just take a 1v1 against 2 healed players and their medic. So it's ideal, you know, to just jump away. So ideally don't take fights unless it's absolutely necessary. In that scenario, probably not necessary, like you said.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, he was sort of out of position on the rooftop anyway, so it was just like, okay, well, we'll, you know, try to see what you can get. Swiss actually is in the fort. Okay, now he's not anymore. He's hopped off. He was on sniper for a second, but
yeah, pay attention to the positioning of this push though from Volume 2. They're really passive.
Yeah, and Black is just getting, like, levitated. They end up using this. They really like this soldier Uber on Fanboy.
It's definitely not a conventional Uber. It's not pre-scout. It's a pre-scout buff kind of Uber.
Yeah, and Mel does go down. These Uber, they kind of, it seems like both teams, when they're taking these Ubers, they're getting split, right? There's no real consensus in the comms of, like, what they're trying to shoot, what they're trying to go for. It seems like they're just like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna use.
You're on Fanboy.
And then, so there's the timer lag, I suppose. Fanboy, can he get PNG? I don't know if he put PNG, but it seems like I was saying, these Ubers, it seems like they're not sold on what they're trying to kill, and what ends up happening more often than not is, like, the post fight, which is more important than the fight in general, in my opinion. The post fight is not going in, like, the aggressor's favor because, like, the team is split, the meta's just gone missing. I don't know where the meta is. And to be honest, I don't think the soldier Ubers are really worth it. I think just being able to use the scout to buy the space, right? Going back to that space concept, is much more useful than, like, having a soldier who can just, like, jump in. PNG does get picked off by Fanboy. Fanboy's been playing pretty well. throughout the night.
Yeah, his
So
bomb's been pretty good, like you said.
yeah, but
But there's only
but he,
25 seconds left, so I think we can probably start talking about the matches. It's pretty much grudge or garbage time for stats.
yeah.
Uh, I do want to start off. We've been talking about the medics, but let's talk about the overall team play. Like you said, starting off with those soldier pushes from every team. Not an ideal, to lead on your soldier, but it's also not ideal to, use just because you're pushing through a doorway. A lot of teams at the lower level think, you have to use Uber as you push through a doorway, but not really. Oh, and by the way, Gully Gamers does win the match 4-1.
There
So,
we go.
but let's talk a little more about the pushes. And like I said, to go off my point, you don't have to use instantly when you walk through a choke point. Most teams generally only use as they walk through a choke point if there's two scenarios where one, your medic just gets forced from sack, or two, you guys are close enough to the enemy team that you can just walk in with that Uber on your scout or soldier, and you know for a fact that you have a really good chance of killing the medic. It works out at this level just because it's newcomer, but just because it works at this level doesn't mean it's going to work at higher levels. Let's just emphasize
Mm.
that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I don't know. There's a time and a place for a soldier Uber, and I don't think it's sort of as a transitional Uber. I think it's like maybe if you're doing something where it's like, okay, we're going to use here just to delay a little bit, using on a soldier is fine, or using on a soldier if you're in a last hold is kind of useful. But I'm not sold on using on the demo than flashing the soldier. I think more important is for both Mel and PNG having like utilizing your scout speed more is I guess what the point is going to be. Like the fact that you can run the same speed of the scout is so like powerful. It's not even funny, right? There's a reason why scout is such a powerful class in sixes. And so if you're using say like you're using out of saw on the demo, like if you then leash your scout and run back to where the demo is, you don't have these situations where either Plaque or Zornix is bombing in and then like just getting minced once they're unflashed, right? You really want to make sure that um, that the players that you're including in the Uber are like deliberate, right? You don't want to have your soldier in the Uber just because, right? You want him to either bomb in first or have him come in after you've initiated the fight and like either solidify the space that you've bought or like clean up players who are like lurking behind. Um, and because there are a few times like coming out through saw or even pushing out through bats off the ramp onto second, and this is more for goalie gamers and bombing in two. Like you really want to utilize your scout speed in transitions. Actually, I think that's a really good
The
point.
lack of that,
Thanks,
honestly,
Jazz.
aside from last push
Yeah,
too.
it's like you need to when you're in transition, like you want to go point to point as fast as you can, right? You don't want to dilly dally. You don't want to kind of be lackadaisical about it. You need to get from mid to second fast and like taking as little frags against you as possible. And so like that's why scout speed is very important, especially also like when you're pushing lower, right? Being able to run at the speed of the scout is just going to like it makes that the soldiers who are bombing for you just more their life a little bit more um, tricky. And so that also goes into another point that I wrote down: awareness. Like sort of be aware what the situation is. We're pushing in. We have full Uber advantage. Like they can send a player or two after your med. Like no problems, right? That's going to be the play. So anticipating like what the threat is to your med, what the threat is to your demo, what the threat is to your player is very important. And that just comes with time and sort of being aware of the game, the meta game, I suppose. Don't backpedal if soldiers are bombing you. You can walk under them. Very, very good. Um, both teams, your post Uber positioning is awful. Um, I did use awful on there. Uh, when you're fading, and this is for the meta or just any player, right? Main caller doesn't matter. Um, like sort of have an idea like once you're about to fade, maybe 4 or 5 seconds in the Uber, call where you're going to fade. Okay, we're using it through saw, we're fading on point, right? Because then that gives your players an idea of like where they need to play around, and also like where they should be anticipating where you're going to be ending. More important, this is very important, especially on last pushes too. Like you're pushing into last. Okay, we're going to use N bomb. sentry top right and top right, right? Because then it's like, okay, well, there's our space that we're going to go into. Um, Bombing into your last pushers are just really, really bad, like really, really bad. Like figure out the coordination issues and like you guys, because bombing into like your DM's really, really good. Don't get me wrong, um, and like it seems like you've got the makings of like a really sharp team there. If you work on that coordination and maybe stop being as DM reliant, then like the game doesn't end 4-1. You know, maybe you still lose, but maybe it's like a 4-3, maybe it's a 4-4 in golden cap. So bombing into really has to figure out those last pushes. Um, and both team demo men, you really need to like focus on trapping more. Um, a
Right.
lot of
I was
time
gonna
these
say.
guys are walking in uncontested. I made this point early on in the cast, um, where it's like Plaque was being pulled away from like looking at Saw to look at lower. You've got soldiers and scouts who can watch lower. You don't need to worry about that. You need to watch Saw, right? Set up traps. If you have to be pulled away from Saw, you need to make sure somebody's watching it. But otherwise, like get some traps set up, wait for the first person to feed, use that pick and buy some space, and then both meds, uh, please like get your soldier players, go in ammo mod, and like get really really good at playing against soldiers and playing against scouts as either a scout or a soldier. Um, Other than that, I think both teams have like some talented players. You know, I was seeing a lot of mistakes that are very indicative of like this is a newcomer team, but like the standard of play for like a newcomer team was still pretty good.
Right.
I think goalie gamers had the better coordination, and as I said in the pregame, like in low levels, it's either coordination or DM. Um, and I think goalie gamers had both coordination and DM. So best of luck for the season. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna
and
actually add on to that. I'm gonna
please,
add
please.
on to that. So I'll talk about the. Let me talk about the soldiers and the scouts here. So I'll give some pointers to Peepoo and
Yeah,
Mothman. Hopefully they're
thank
in the
you by the way,
chat.
because I all my all my advice is like 80%
Yeah,
medic centric, and then
I was hoping
then
to
the rest.
interject during the cast, like talk about the soldiers, scouts, and demos, but it felt like we were just talking about the medics. So I'll just try to talk about the scouts, soldiers, and demos. Thankfully, you guys, I played soldier and scout primarily, and then I played medic for a season, so that's why we were talking about the medics. But Peepoo and Mothman, you guys generally have a tendency to bomb and then fully commit. Just know at higher levels or as you keep playing, you don't necessarily need to commit with your bombs, and also you don't have to be the first ones always in with your always in ahead of your team. So you don't have to bomb to create space for your team. You can, assuming your team is like pushing in with an Uber, you guys can listen to what they're focusing. Like it's very important to have comms, like we said prior to the map review, because depending on where they are and where the enemy team is, you can use the distraction of your team's combo pushing to like bomb and land on the players that are looking towards your combo. But you guys can definitely do like if you look at at this demo looking later on, you'll notice how Lil Rowdy and Fanboy usually bombs in after their team goes in, and the only times that they bomb ahead is only if they're creating space. Just in general, for Swifts and Cinnamon, you guys need to be more ahead of your medic and like spot, be the eyes for your medic, spot what's in the sky, and also you don't need to necessarily stay around in the flank. I believe that's Swifts who's the flank scout. You guys generally like in some scenarios, like for example, if you're pushing from mid to lower, you should have both scouts with your medic. Because if you anticipate a soldier high bomb, it's way better to kill him when you have two scouts. And that's also a shout out to PNG, like Jazz and I have been saying throughout the match. Him and Mel tend to really back up from soldier bombs. So it's up to you guys not to back up away from the soldier bomb, but to go forward towards that soldier bomb and deny him before he lands on the ground and just shoots down your medic with like full HP and like two rockets. So make it a point to really be ahead of your medic and just shoot down the soldiers and like spot the soldiers for your medic. Don't let your medic be the one spotting him and then getting forced off of it.
Yeah,
Pipu and Mothman, that also applies to you too. So
and I kind of want to add to that point. It's like one thing that the demos can do as well, like if you're taking a push through low or any sort of push where it's like the soldiers are going to bomb, like just put some stickies down on the ground and like you can bait those bombs out, right? That's one thing I think both meds or both teams could really do a lot more is sort of baiting those those sacks, right? It's like you don't have to fully commit through the doorway. You can have some players commit through because you know the soldiers are going to be bombing anyway. Have the soldiers commit through, and then like you're in a safe enough position where you can just like kite out. So like an example of that would be and this is very salient for the meds to listen to is like um, when your team is in transition, you don't always have to walk through the doorway at the same time, right? You can wait a second, two, three, for that sack to come in, and then like you can kite it without having taken any damage, right? You don't have to worry about surfing, you don't have to worry about back pedaling or front pedaling or side pedaling or riding your bike or whatever you're gonna do. Like you can just like, oh well, I'm standing way the heck back in lower, right next to the pack, and then the soldier's life becomes so much more difficult because in order to get to you, he has to expend a lot of resources while like two or three players are shooting at him. Um, One other point that I was going to make, because that's the only other point that I wrote down and my brain is starting to shut down on me, is for Mel and PNG. Oh, first off, the pocket scouts, you need to be hand holding your med the entire time. Like
Yeah.
consider it your personal job to make sure that they survive, right?
Yeah,
If they
you.
die,
That's the only cost that has to be leashed to heals, basically.
yeah,
I would.
if they die, sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's not your fault. But there's a couple instances where like the combo for both teams are just like totally broken down. Like I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like one was like both scouts were on second, and then Mel had somehow found herself like alone in lobby or in saw, and then like a scout got on her in saw, and like what the hell, where's the scouts? So like if your med is up, um, and like you guys were together and now you're not together, like you need to figure out, okay, where the hell is it? And then that's also for Mel, like, and PNG, like tank your scouts at times. Like they're speedy and they can do a lot of damage, big damage actually. Some of the biggest damage you'll ever see will come from the scout. So like pump some heals into them, right? Um, that's it's there's the being able to go really fast. Like the scout, essentially the scout's HP at when they have the beam on them is essentially infinite, right? Because you
Mhm.
can just keep on running with them forever. So like tank your scouts a little bit more, especially like who was the flank scout on bomb on goalie 32-23 whatever
32.
that was. he was
32.
he was tearing it up, right? If he is either like shifted over into pocket, which I guess Quiggles is like got a potato computer, so that's why. But if he's in these Ubers, like he's going to be cleaning up players, no issues. Um, so tank your scouts more, and like the beam stretches really far, right? The beam stretches really far. Let me say that again. Your med beam stretches really, really far, right? Get used to like the distance that you can put between you and your players, and like let them lead the charge. Stop walking in front of your players is what I'm trying to say. Stop walking in front of your players. I'm just like, what are
Right.
you standing there? They're gonna shoot you. um,
Yeah.
um,
Let's quickly let's drive away from the medics though, and let's continue on that point towards toward the scouts. I think 32, or if you're in the chat here, Jazz made a good point. Since Squiggles does have a bad computer, you should generally try to avoid going for flanks as much as you did, aside from the mids. The mid flanks are really good. Try to help Mel out a little more, or whoever your main medic is, since Squiggles' computer is bad. And obviously for other teams, you guys can abuse that fact that Squiggles has a bad computer. And for the side of Bombing 2, I think it's not just the scouts, but like I think Jazz really hit the nail on the head where you guys tended to peek doorways of where you were pushing early before you actually committed to the push. So your pushes were really telegraphed. You should spot where you want to push, but don't like show your beam through that doorway. Jazz, I think you get what I'm saying there.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, just if you're picking a doorway, use it to like gather intel, and then like gather intel, buff everybody up before you push. But like make sure like at the very least your combo's buffed up, and then like just you can just use through the doorway, right? You know, because I remember vividly, and I hate to keep harping on the meds, but it's like I remember Mel had like walked in front of the team, pushing through lower into last, and then like everybody just stood there for 2 or 3 seconds, and then it's like just it's one of those things like don't hesitate with these things, right? I made this point earlier. You're either in or you're out, and like if you're in, then everybody has to be in. If you're out, everybody's out unless like you're going for a sack. Um, I think I genuinely believe that it is so much better for your team, like if you're pushing or retreating. If everybody is all in on a half play, it is better than everybody being half in on a great play, right? Because if you're all in on a half play, it has the potential to like become a great play. But if you're only half in, even if it is a good play, it'll break down on you because like okay,
Right.
well nobody's really fully committed. Um, but I also think fully committing is like it's I like to use it's sort of like taking a linear path, right? If you're going from pushing from lower into last, then you just do it, right? You don't hesitate, you don't telegraph, which was the word I was looking for in the cast that I forgot how to say. You don't telegraph what your move is, like you make your move, right? You know what your move is already, right? You want them to be caught out, right? And please like focus fire, focus fire, focus fire. Whoever the main
Yeah, that's
caller is,
bombs.
like call who you're shooting at, call who you need to shoot at. If you're the demo and you've just done 100, onto the scout. Scout hit 100. Everybody turn, shoot him, or soldiers hit 150, shoot the soldiers. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of fights that I was seeing where it's like one player shooting one play and then everybody's shooting different things. And it's like, if you can turn these 1v1s that you're taking into 2v1s, oh my God, things become so much more easier because all of a sudden, like players are just going down systematically. Oh, that soldier's overextended, he's dead. Oh, that med's caught out, he's dead. Oh, this demo thinks he's slick because he's putting up traps in this place. Well, now the traps are gone and like he's dead too, right? That only happens if like everybody's on the same page. But that's and um, being on the same page, like that comes with time. Being on the same page comes with like teamwork, comes with coordination, comes with watching either like the fireside cast or like taking the STV demo and watching it back with a team and a mentor. Um, but I think to sort of close it up, I think both teams, even though goalie gamers lost, I thought they played well. You guys
All
have
game
good.
results? I'm
I
pretty
mean,
sure
I
it's
mean,
bombing
bombing in
too.
two. Sorry, bombing in two. Even though like you lost the game, I thought you guys have good DM. Coordination issues need to be cleaned up, but like that comes with time, and that comes with getting used to the game and calling and all these things. And then with goalie gamers, I think you guys have good coordination. The DM is there too. If you can clean up the issues with combo and figure out like how to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. Same goes with bombing in two. Then you guys have no problem, and you'll shoot up the divs in no time. And also play MGE. Learn how to soldier versus soldier MGE and ammo mod. Great for meds. Great for everybody. Just play MGE and ammo mod and DM servers. I don't know what to say anymore. That's all I got.
Yeah. All I got, the rest that I have, I don't really have anything to say for Gully Gamer Soldiers. You guys have really good bombs, and you guys play really well off of capitalizing on your team's what's going on in the current situation and just baiting your team really well. You guys have really good bombs, at least creating space, even if you guys have to commit your life for it. Plaque, I don't know what to say aside from trash because you guys you had some really nice pipes. So props to you. I think you're the MVP of the match because I've caught a few times where you just like two piped everybody. Zornix or
It
Vornix.
actually quickly, it actually got to the point where when they were in the mid fights, bombing into was going for the demo instead of the med,
Yeah.
because it's like
Yeah.
that's how much of an impact he was making. So that's also quickly really good awareness from bombing into to like realize, oh fuck, it's the demo. He's doing a lot of work. We need to take him down. He's a
Mm-hmm.
more valuable pick. So I like that adaptability from both teams.
And on the side of Volume 2, whoever you're done is Vornix, Zornix. Antlers, our producer says, turn down your sense a little bit. You could probably hit the NGE up a little more with your lower sense because it tends to beef a lot of pipes. But aside from that, you had some pretty good scenarios where you got some kills. Aside from that, don't really have much to say. I think we're gonna shut it off here. MVPs for me, Plaque, you're the real MVP, Fanboy, secondary MVP. On the side of Bombing 2, Mothman and Peepoo, you guys had some really good bombs. So I'm going to give it to you guys, even though it was a bit labored early on. You guys know what you have to do. If you guys want a demo review, you can hit me up on Discord. It's Josh with an H. My Discord tag is 5532. I'd be willing to demo review your match for you if you guys need additional help. We're gonna close it. We're gonna close shop here. We apologize for the late post game talk, but it was great to watch your match.
Once I start talking, I can't stop myself.
No worries. But yeah, we're gonna close it out here. End of trout. End of week 4 Snake Water. Trial by Fireside. Newcomer coverage for the first time in this season between Gully Gamers and Bombing and 2. Gully Gamers has won 4-1. I am your host and basically the lead of this project, Jay. We had our special guest, Just Jazz, or just you can call him Jazz for short. But I mean that's what Just Jazz really means. So thank you for showing up, Just Jazz, and I
Always.
want to thank Antlers once again and Micro Cheese coming on production with Micro Cheese helping out prior to the cast. So thank you guys and have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.